Shalom, I'm Rabbi Gail Schuster-Buskila, and today I'd like to talk about Parashat Terumah, the seventh Torah portion for the book of Exodus, which deals with the building of the tabernacle, the movable structure that was supposed to be for worship in the desert. It's a rather complicated and puzzling parasha, Torah reading, so let's get right to it. As you can see, I am not exactly at my Midrash page yet. I am in a search page of images under the title Bible Tabernacle. You have to be very careful what you look at because there are all sorts of different kinds of things, including pictures of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which is a wonderful choir. I'm not saying anything negative about it. I'm just saying that if you're interested in looking at all different sorts of ideas, and I mean all different sorts of ideas, you really have to be careful at what you look for. I'm not going to look at anything in particular, but I just wanted to show you and then you see that it goes all different places. So you have to be very careful of what you look for. Maybe you'll look at the wilderness tabernacle. I don't know. In any case, it's quite an interesting compilation that you can find. As you can see, my midrash is entitled "Sacred Space," and we're going to concentrate on a couple of verses. But I would always suggest that anybody who's interested in looking at this rather complicated list of instructions go to Sefaria, where you can see the Hebrew and the English next to each other, and read as much as you possibly can. It isn't easy. I want to, before I begin to read, you can see here that I have a link to a new word here in our glossary, and also I often put a footnote so that you can find out something, so you don't have to leave the page. But I will go leave the page for this word Mishkan. And here you see it down in the glossary of terms. And we're dealing with the idea of the tabernacle. It means abode. I shall abide. Of course, it's a portable sanctuary. So it could be carried while the Israelites, the children of Israel, were in the desert on their way from Egypt to the land of Israel. I like to begin first with the Bible verses from chapter 25, and then just a few lines from my midrash. They will make a holy place for me, so I will place myself among them, according to what I show you, the plans for the Mishkan and the plans for all the furnishings you will make. My midrash. Where is a place for God to dwell? Where is sacred space? Is size important as volume or location? Could it be as small as the tip of a pin or as large as an enormous stadium? If it is small, can it be anywhere? But if it is large, it can only be in one place. So I've asked these questions to be able to try to figure out what this is in our tradition. As you can see depicted on this slide, there are 5 different books that I have quoted, and I will quote in the course of this discussion. I don't think I've ever had so many sources for a discussion, because this is a complicated subject. First of all, as we saw in the book of Exodus, we have now a drawing of the Tabernacle by Adele Berlin from the Jewish Study Bible. And you can see the really exact measurements, the cubits here, the cubits there, where things are supposed to be, and then how they're supposed to be exactly placed in the north, south, east, west contingent. And it's just amazing. We have an idea from the sketch here, but of course there's no way to be able to flesh it out with these explanations. James Kugel talks about the fact that the laws of the Pentateuch implied an automatic and ongoing connection between God and the human beings charged with obeying them. But how do you keep that connection going? And that's what most people feel was the job of being in the tabernacle, and that's how they bridge this gap. Robert also Alter discusses the tabernacle as well in his introduction to the book of Exodus. The tabernacle, I would suggest, was imagined by these writers as a vision of perfectly orchestrated harmony, enacted through the meticulous crafts of architecture, weaving, dyeing, wood carving, and metalwork, and implementation by human artisans, following divine directives of the sort of comprehensive harmony figured in the priestly account of the creation. What he's talking about here is fascinating, that the first account in the Bible, which was an exact account of what is supposed to happen on each of the 7 days of creation, was a priestly text. And so it's not surprising that the tabernacle itself is dealt with in the same way. Leon Kass, in his Founding God's Nation, which is a discussion of the book of Exodus, talks about the fact that he came to see the founding of the Israelite nation resting on 3 pillars. First of all, the story of slavery in the Exodus from Egypt, providing the national narrative and the memory of common history, suffering, and deliverance. There is the covenant and the giving of the law, the moral, legal foundation of everyday conduct within the political community, but there are also the ritual enactments in the tent of meeting, which is another name for the tabernacle, that speaks to the human soul's deep longing for transcendence, and that quite mysteriously can bring a numinous presence into the daily lives of ordinary human beings. Again, this connection with the divine, and it would happen on a daily basis in the tabernacle. Mel Scott reports the ideas of Mordecai Kaplan in his book, The Radical American Judaism of Mordecai Kaplan, where I don't think it's just American. I think these ideas are universal. In the Jewish tradition, the spirit or presence of God, also known as the Shekhinah, and which is interestingly, as you see at the bottom, the word itself means dwelling. Shachen means dwelling, and Shekhinah denotes the dwelling or settling of the divine presence of God. Is particularly associated with public worship. It's not that you can't have any connection with God privately, but as you can see from the beginning of the book of Exodus, this is really very, we're talking about a group experience. Moses, of course, has one with the burning bush, and there is supposed to be some sort of communication, but he's really dealing with the whole people. It is not only in the tabernacle of old that the presence dwelt, but at any time that 10 individuals gather for prayer. In Kaplan's words, realizing that others share our needs, our hopes, our fears, and our ideals, we no longer feel dependent entirely on our own efforts for our salvation. That really is the case, that we in the tabernacle, children of Israel in the desert, could be gathered together and experience this connection with the divine that had brought them to that place. It's an interesting question as to whether modern day prayer does the same for us in a house of worship, whatever religion, specifically a synagogue for Jews. And we don't know if the tabernacle itself existed, but there seems to be a desire to try and return in some way, shape, or form to the connection with the Shekhinah, or the divine presence of God. I hope you take the time to read my entire Midrash, but I'd like to read the lines from the end and for you to look at this Shiviti, this artistic element that tries to help you or us to focus on our experience of the divine. And I'd like just to read the end of my Midrash. We are the sanctuary, the sacred space where God dwells. Each atom in this universe, in this expansive cosmos, is a building block of the sacred space, neither good nor evil until activated by a touch or a push or a pull. I hope you enjoyed my introduction to the idea of the tabernacle in Parashat Terumah, and I hope that you have an interesting and challenging Shabbat Terumah. Shabbat Shalom.